Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending the panel. We're going to be speaking about exploring the focus in tokenization, interest, and rationale. I think we've been speaking a lot about tokenization today, and this is kind of a complementary speech, and we're going to be exploring a little bit in different direction. Very honored to be here today with Gaspard, Hadrien, and Jon, and I would let them have a little intro. So let's start by Jon, if that is okay.
Yeah. Hi, so I'm Jon Egilsson, and I'm from a company called Moderator. So what we do is that we issue the digital euro. It's the first e-money token that was issued back in 2019, and the company has also integrated fully with the European payment system SEPA. So that's what we do. I went into this space because I was in banking and central banking, and I thought that the technology was a fantastic way to improve things.
Thanks, Jon. So, Hadrien, I will follow up with you. If you can have a little intro of yourself, please just explain to people how you get into the space and what you're doing.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with us. I work for Nomadic Lab. We are a French company based in Paris, building the Tezos blockchain. Basically, we are 70 people with one big department of computing science developers and building the Tezos blockchain, maintaining it, updating it. And we also work in France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands, trying to push the adoption of this protocol. So we work with companies such as Telindus, Proximus, PMU, Société Générale, Ubisoft. Before that, I was working in oil and gas industry in Latin America. I am an engineer, and I discovered Bitcoin and Tezos when I was in Brazil, and very quickly I was fascinated by the technology, decided to try to work in this ecosystem, which I did since 2019 when I joined Nomadic Lab. So very happy to be here, and hopefully, I hope we will have interesting discussions together.
Thanks a lot, Hadrien. Gaspard, please, can you introduce yourself and give a little background? I think it's a very interesting story.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Gaspard Peduzzi. I have a computer science background. I'm one of the co-founders of AP1 protocol, which is a protocol doing interest rate derivatives, so a DeFi protocol. And I'm in this space because I'm passionate about censorship-resistant systems, and I discovered Bitcoin 10 years ago playing with computers, and fell in love with decentralized system.
Thanks a lot, Gaspard. So, just emphasizing on that, I think it's really important. Can you kind of share your background in a way that, you started basically, you explained you started in the DeFi summer, and that's kind of what led you to start AP1. So can you just share a little bit of that story that will allow me to get to the next question?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So DeFi summer was a time frame in 2020 where DeFi was growing exponentially, and a lot of liquidity was coming with a lot of new protocols every day. And we had interest rates extremely volatile, particularly volatile, even more than today. And there was no mean to speculate on their variations. So people were talking about them, moving funds around, but no way to hedge the interest rates or to speculate on the future revenues. And that's where we came into places with a computer science background, but learning about interest rate derivatives, and eventually we thought it was the great fit and the necessary piece to make DeFi efficient.
Yeah, perfect. So indeed, I just want to outline here how tokenization can bring someone with a computer science background to actually build a derivative protocol on chain. So getting on that, what is the impact of tokenization on DeFi, and do you believe it could improve liquidity on different layers?
100%, because DeFi is composable by nature. We are talking about money Lego even, and to have those Lego being plugged to each other to bring efficient systems of flows of liquidity, you need standard. You need standardized interface, and that's where tokens comes into places, because they can represent value, anything, and that's how it's a mean to an end to make efficient mechanism, composable and interconnected systems.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks. I don't know if Jon, you want to add something to that?
No, I think the composability that you spoke about is really important. So it means that different companies and platforms, they can specialize.
Yeah.
And then you build on it. I mean, this is, it's really hard to compete with.
Yeah.
In the current system, you have, banks and financial institutions operating more in silos.
Yeah.
So I think this is a really important feature that Gaspard is mentioning.
Absolutely. And I think additionally to that, tokenization, opens up transparency till a certain extent, right? So on that front, do you think tokenization would have helped in, in terms of the recent events that happened in the past couple of weeks, with all the banks, collapse and so on? So what is your take on that? Have tokenization helped, in that stage to maybe anticipate or to maybe, kind of avoid those issues?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. Obviously, more transparency, for example, if we take a specific example like Silicon Valley Bank,
yeah,
then that was a bank that basically made some mistake. They invested in treasuries, long duration treasuries with a high price volatility, and they obviously got it wrong.
Yeah.
If it would be held more transparent and obvious to everyone, people would have seen what was happening.
Absolutely.
That's one thing. So that is one thing that transparency brings to the table. But I think more importantly than DeFi in general, or this Web3 technology, can increase financial stability in the financial world. And why do I say this? If we remember what happened, or if we remember the white paper that Satoshi Nakamoto issued in October 2008, then if you read the first sentence in the abstract, it says that he or she or they or whoever, Satoshi Nakamoto is, and they say, we want to allow individuals to transact peer-to-peer without the intermediation of financial institutions such as banks.
Yeah.
And why was there a bank run on Silicon Valley Bank? It was because people were afraid for two reasons. First, the bank could deny access to their funds, number one. And number two, they were afraid that the bank would go bankrupt. So there was a counterparty risk. With the blockchain, the double spending problem was solved. And not only that, you basically took away the counterparty risk because it's peer-to-peer. There is no intermediary. So there is no counterparty risk. Number two, then you can store your funds on blockchain. So you don't have to store it with some third party. So this is really important. So if we manage to build financial systems based on those core principles, we can increase financial stability. And then over the last few years, we have seen tremendous and interesting projects built on top of this. For example, wallets, non-custodial wallets. So you can manage your funds through non-custodial wallets. And 2 or 3 days ago, the SEC was suing Coinbase. And why was that? They sued Coinbase because they said, well, you need regulation. Okay, that's understandable. Why is that? It's because there's counterparty risk and there is settlement risk. Okay, so the counterparty risk is similar to banks, but the settlement risk is solved by the blockchain, because when you in a decentralized exchange, you exchange assets atomically, meaning that both parties, they get their assets or nothing happens. So there is no settlement risk. So the transaction is the settlement. And now we have all these regulation in the decentralized world that is not needed because it's not relevant. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity to change the way that finance is conducted. So yes, I think, first of all, we could have we could have had avoided some of the problems because of transparency. And then we could have built, and we can build, a better system.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And indeed, I believe if everyone had the control or access to their fund, there wouldn't be this like rush to withdraw because not being sure what could have happened with the banks would have kept the situation kind of stable. So yeah, completely makes sense. And I think when we speak about tokenization, it's often for certain parties or people that are not really expert in the topics. It really seems very abstract sometimes. So maybe Hadrien, you're representing Tezos, a blockchain. I don't know, can you give us a couple of use case, like solid use case, concrete use case that you've done in terms of tokenization?
Sure. The first one I have in mind is an experimentation that started in 2020, right after the speech of the governor of the Banque de France, where we worked together with the central bank in France to tokenize the digital euro. So it was something interesting, not on the public chain. So it was on the private version of Tezos. And then it led to an experimentation with the European Central Bank, which was to represent a digital euro on a private blockchain and to transfer it between two wallets. So very easy, but it's a good example of the tokenization of an asset. The second I have in mind is an alternative investment fund in France that we've been working on the tokenization of this fund. And the idea of this project was to tokenize, so it means to represent the share of this investment fund under the form of a security token. So we talk about the STO, security token offering. And so we work with a French technical integrator called Blockchain XDev and a French company called Logical Pictures. And the idea was to create this fund, to represent the share of the fund under the form of security token, and to allow people to invest in Bitfund to help the movie industry, very surprisingly. And it was in partnership with BNP Paribas, who was the bank, which was the bank behind the project. So it's a second example of a tokenization project. Very easy. You take an investment fund and you represent the shares of the fund under the form of a security token. We've been involved as well with Société Générale Forge in France again to build, we only brought technical support, but to build a tokenization platform in order for them to issue financial products such as structured products that are a little bit sophisticated financial assets. And the idea was for Société Générale Forge was to invade the issuance, it was in 2021, to issue structured products, but under the form again of security tokens. And we have a lot of examples of with a project called EquiSafe in Europe, which is a tokenization platform specialized in tokenizing real estate assets. So generally what you do is you create a company, and this company owns real estate assets. And what you're going to do to tokenize the real estate assets, in fact, is to tokenize the shares of this company owning the real estate assets. And yeah, this company, EquiSafe, has tokenized already a little bit less than 1 billion euro of assets on Tezos. So it's an interesting market. And the last example I have in mind is an initiative that was led by a French group in France called Casino that launched a Euro stablecoin called LUG or EuroL. Firstly on Tezos, then on Ethereum and Polygon. The idea was to collateralize this digital assets with euros on a bank account of Société Générale in France. And then you can, the Euro stablecoin exists still today. It's not a huge success, in fact. There is not that much of liquidity. On Tezos, I think there is 5 million euros that you can use on DeFi protocols, automatic market makers, or transfer from wallet to wallet. But surprisingly, even if it's regulated, it's fully collateralized in euro by a French bank, there is not much liquidity. I think it might be explained by the the financial health of the group's casino today. But it's an interesting use case.
Yeah, thanks, Hadrien. And I believe when speaking about all these use cases, we can also think about NFTs. You mentioned structured product, real estate. So there are so many use cases. But still, when we look at the value, like the TVL value locked into crypto today, like compared to what we have in the real world, there's still a lot of room for improvement. So maybe Gaspard, if you want to give your point on that, what do you believe would help like boost tokenization in the coming years?
I think we have mainly two different axes. The one that I will talk less about because it's less my field is the regulatory aspect.
Yeah.
I think we have seen a lot of projects coming up with what we call real world assets, real estates, and many others. I think there we have to have more better regulatory framework to be able to navigate through this space. I think we're in a good position to do that, better than in the US, for example.
Yeah.
But I think also, even in DeFi, purely transactional about stable coins, many things like that, we want to target institutions, and usually those institutions are a bit afraid because of the lack of regulatory framework. So that's definitely one aspect. The other is efficiency, liquidity. So you have to build different ecosystems, but well connected, because composability can create fragmentation, and you need good liquidity, good flows. You need to take into account risks, so have an actual risk management framework, something that we discussed this morning on a panel with other DeFi protocols. All those things have been evolving a lot the past years. Of course, markets impose different kind of liquidity movements, but market aside, I think we're actually growing really in the right direction. I think standards, we mentioned tokens, having different kind of standards helps building integration, helps understanding those products. It helps plugging one thing to another, so more efficient liquidity. We're building different kind of layers as well. So when we talk about layers, it can be abstract protocol on top of each another, but also layers in terms of blockchains. So now we're talking about account abstraction, onboarding the next billion wave of users. I think we are getting really close to those things because now we have the technology for it. We have a better understanding of it, and we are actually aware of what's missing, and we're working in those different points. So I think, apart from the regulatory aspect, which is extremely needed for both builders and users and institutions, we have to continue moving in that direction from the technical point that I mentioned.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I mean, I've heard like this morning in several panels, like the jurisdiction is quite scattered and really not transparent in some jurisdictions, such as Hong Kong, still very opaque. Europe, we're getting there with MiCA, and the US is still very unclear what is going to happen. You were also speaking about tokenizing security, so I think there is definitely a regulatory aspect to take into account. So maybe Jon, you can like enlighten us with your thoughts. Like, how do you see this tokenization across different jurisdictions, right? So would it be able to grow in such a heterogeneous ecosystem? What are your thoughts on that front?
So I've been mostly involved with money on chain. And for money as a token or tokenization of money, then national currencies, they're always and everywhere, they're a legal concept. And this is, money is a part of the monetary system of a nation. So it will always be legalized and regulated, and it should be. And it's also about consumer protection. When it comes to other tokens, it's just different because they're of different nature. But I think it's really important and really encouraging to see that Europe is basically taking a proactive step, trying to provide guidance. I think that's tremendously important because it makes it more secure to engage, to invest, and so on in this space. We don't have clarity on many of the tokens, on securitization, across the level and so on.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to get there, and these are really fundamental questions. But at the end of the day, we cannot say that, well, these are just securities and they should be treated as we do in TradFi. Because much of the regulation, as everyone knows, is because we have this system where you have intermediaries. And when you remove them away, then regulation has to change. But by the same token, then if the general public is to trust platforms that, for example, taxes and so on, then there's other kinds of risk that, you know, the market could solve it, or auditors and so on, because smart contracts, we have seen that have been hacked, people have lost their money and so on. So how do we solve that? You know, there are many ways, but we have to just solve the right issue here. And I think, as I said, I think it's really encouraging to see what's happening in Europe. It's I'm less optimistic about that the US is solving it right now, but because of competition between countries, and when we see more and more people and companies in Europe utilizing this technology, then that will create a pressure on the US to step up their game, get the regulation right, and so on. So, in general, I'm very optimistic. I don't think TradFi has a chance, but it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for that point of view. And maybe, Hadrien, if I can just, like, you have a couple of use cases, you know, same with tokenizing money. Have you had a couple of, you know, legal issues? How did you deal with that? You know, when it comes to different projects, you've been working with Casino and other entities. How was it for you, just briefly? Like what you can share. I know it's not always.
So we had two projects. One was with directly the French regulator, the Banque de France.
Yeah.
So no problem. And we were only contributing and providing technical support regarding the Tezos blockchain. So I would say no legal issues. And it was only an experiment. So at the end, the European Central Bank will decide. They are taking their time. I think there is a lot of geopolitical things to take into account. I think the ECB is moving because the Chinese have launched their digital yuan, and they need as well a counter measure to the USDC or to US initiatives as well. So we had to stay, and we still have to stay very humble, and we provide technical support regarding our technology and not more. Regarding Casino, we stay at the same level, provider of technical support, specialist of the Tezos technology. But I can tell you, yes, that first it was very difficult for the Casino group to launch this stablecoin. In fact, at the very beginning, the Euro stablecoin LUG was only accessible on one exchange in France, which is called CoinHouse, and you didn't have the possibility to transfer it from wallet to wallet.
Yeah.
So it took a lot of discussion with the regulator, the ACPR, yeah. Which is linked to the central bank, Banque de France. And after few months of discussion and with lawyers, they gave the possibility to transfer it between wallets and to use it on-chain in decentralized protocol, so DeFi protocol. So it took a bit of time indeed.
Okay, thank you. Maybe you might want to chime in on that?
Yeah, just to one comment on what Hadrien was saying with regards to CBDC and what the Chinese are doing. I would like to warn any central banks to think that they should compete in this market. I don't think it's a role of a central bank. The Chinese, yes, they are issuing their currency, but that is a part of another agenda, and it's linked to their social system. And I don't think that we in the West want to monitor our citizens in that way. And I don't see any reason why central banks should issue retail CBDC. I understand that the central banks should back private companies issuing e-money tokens. But as was said in a recent report in the UK, CBDC, and in my mind, is just a solution in search of a problem. I don't see why. I don't think we should look to the Chinese as something that we should imitate.
Yeah, definitely, definitely agree. So when speaking about this, central banks issuing the CBDC, a bunch of actors, issuing the token, or probably real estate companies trying to, tokenize real estate, are we really going to this permissionless, trusted public network, or do you believe that we might end up in a couple of private blockchains where some of them, issue their token for the company sector? How do you see that, Hadrien? Maybe the right person to ask the question.
I love this question, and I will give you a feedback from, again, Société Générale Forge. We discussed that 2 years ago, and they said, look, as you know, Société Générale is issuing financial products on public blockchain only. And it's interesting, because they did it since 2019, I think, and since the beginning, they were on Ethereum public chain. They did it as well on Tezos, and most recently, most of it is on Ethereum. And whereas many other banks were using private blockchains such as Hyperledger, Corda, etc. So they said, look, we do it on a public chain because if you want to create liquidity, it works only on public chain. They said, if you, for instance, are on a private blockchain with a consortium of other banks, and there is, for instance, Société Générale that wants to issue some tokens, security tokens representing bonds, and they want to do the deal with a Japanese bank. You can be sure that within the consortium of private banks, there will be one against this deal just to penalize Société Générale, because at the end they are competitors. And you cannot create liquidity in a private ecosystem on a private blockchain according to them, and I share this point of view. If you want to create liquidity, and they need liquidity, they need market depth to be able to trade and to earn money because they are bankers, to trade their financial assets, you need to be able to trade with anyone without asking the permission. And this is exactly what you can do on the public blockchain. So I believe that tokenization will take place and will succeed only on public blockchains, permissionless blockchain, because on private blockchains, there will be always conflicts between the different stakeholders of the private network. Whereas on the public blockchain, you can trade with everyone you want. You just need to access to this public network. So I think it was a very good explanation, saying that digital euro or central bank's currency will be on public blockchain is more difficult, I think, because I don't see a central bank accepting that transactions, smart contract calls related to this digital euro to be included in blocks validated by validator nodes that could be in competitive countries such as China or Russia, actually. So it's more difficult. But for financial assets or real estate assets, 100% public blockchains. Yeah,
thanks a lot. Maybe Gaspard wanna put a word on that?
Yeah, just to add something on that. I think there is also a common misunderstanding in the public and private world, in the sense that you can have access control on a public blockchain, you can have privacy on a public blockchain, but you cannot have censorship resistance in a private blockchain. It's just a centralized blockchain and a decentralized blockchain, because it's at the execution layer mostly. So eventually, indeed, if you want to be interconnected, have liquidity and everything, you have to be in the same place and not just control the environment by the settlement layer. But even we've seen actually with the ACC US thing happening recently, like the question of decentralization happens a lot. It was actually brought in panels regarding regulatory topics this morning as well. Like it's not a fancy word. It matters because it needs to be done for in order to have a censorship resistance and a permissionless infrastructure. But then on top of that, you're completely free to build access control rules and privacy systems and everything. But that's like a common misunderstanding, because a lot of companies say, we are not going to put that on a public blockchain because that's public, but it's not the point.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Gaspard. I think the clarification makes a lot of sense. And maybe you want to add a little word just on, tokenization and security. I know your protocol is kind of in those landscapes, so yeah, just a little few words on security.
Yeah. I mean, so eventually, by doing decentralized finance, there is a financial world in it, and but if you want to be decentralized, you actually have to be decentralized, and that's a responsibility of everyone building protocols, because we don't want to do just on-chain finance, and in terms of accountability and responsibility, you want to decentralize those worlds as well. So this morning we were talking about immutability, about like governance systems and all. Those are very key topics to achieve the decentralization of it. I think from a regulatory aspect, with regulators that are coming into the game, which is a great thing, those terms have even more sense, because eventually the question of what you can do and what's your responsibility have a lot of sense as a person building a protocol, as a users, and as a protocol integrating another protocol as well. So I think those things will become way more into the picture now that it's a matter of legal issue as well.
Thanks a lot, Gaspard. So thank you all for your participation. Now let's take quite a few questions from the audience, if there are any. I think it's amazing to be able to leverage the knowledge of our panelists. Any questions? No. Okay, well, I guess thanks a lot to you all for your participation, and yeah, it was great having you guys around.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.